Welcome to the Business Boom Podcast, powered by Boomtag Media. Each week, we are sitting down with growth-obsessed, dynamic entrepreneurs, marketing experts, and business owners who have cracked the code to explosive growth. I'm your host, Kendra Noel. Let's take things to the next level and spark your business into its boom era. Hi, Trapper. How are you doing today? We are live for the 7th episode of the Business Boom Podcast. I'm really excited to have you here today. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'm super excited also.
Oh, great. I want to give a little bit of a quick intro backstory into how we met and kind of how we got here to this podcast recording today. So I would say it's a little bit of a bittersweet sandwich. So we're going to start with sweet. Sweet part is we haven't talked very much since grade school. We did graduate together, but I would say after a grade school, we kind of lost track of each other, hadn't talked as much. And then the bitter part sounds like you've really come across some trauma, some hard things in life since then. And the sweet part is, resilience. You come through that trauma, you come out better, and you have a new book coming out, and you've got some really cool things to talk about. So I'm excited to dive into the conversation today.
Likewise. Yeah, I'm super pumped.
Yeah. Can you just give us a little bit more information about you?
Yeah. So my name's Trapper Searles from Casper, Wyoming. Just spent 21 years in Denver, in the process of moving my family to Arizona right now. So a lot going on. Just finished my first book. So I'm a life energy coach based off of 7 energy levels, which is amazing. And it aligns with me and so many people. And yeah, just over the last 20 years, have experienced a lot of trauma, but I've always had perspective. And I just always knew that I would learn what those traumas were supposed to teach me at some point in life. I just didn't know when and how and where. So when I woke up one night after having a dream about a book, and I was like, I'm going to write the book.
That's so cool. So many people have the dream about it, and then they just kind of let it sit on a shelf, you could say, and never end up actually following through and actually doing it. So I think that that's very cool that you just took action and you're doing the thing. So congratulations on that. And it looks like we have some people joining us live today. So I'm excited to get their perspective as well. And if we're talking about something that resonates, feel free to put your questions, comments in the chat, and we'll go ahead and ask Trapper for his thoughts on those and hopefully be able to throw some of those on screen. So we should kind of say that there is a little bit of a trigger warning with today's episode because we will be talking about the subject of your book, which has to do with a suicide attempt.
That's right. Yep. I can share the title if you'd like, or I can.
Yeah, let's get into it. Tell us what your book is about, and we can go to what led to it.
Yeah. So the book is called I Survived Suicide by Killing Myself. It's a story of pain to purpose, and it's a memoir, mental health perspective story. So just starts out from early childhood until about 6 months ago when I finished the book. And, every day is a journey that could add, more pages, but that'll have to come in the second book. So.
Yeah. So that's already a thought then. You think authorship is going to be like something that you're just into and potentially some more books on the way?
Yeah. I mean, when I started the process of this one, honestly, I wasn't even a big reader, and all of the books that I had read had to do with business and scaling and entrepreneurialism. Since writing a book, you learn a lot about the process, and then, you have more ideas that come to mind. And Yeah, I think I have like 2 or 3 more books on deck. I'm going to try to settle first and then continue to grow other parts of my life. And then, yeah, I think another book will be probably out in the next year or 18 months.
Cool. So you're settling in Arizona. What kind of led you guys and your family to make the change from Denver to Arizona?
Yeah. So, I think like so many people, we tell ourselves or we set these goals of, hey, later in life, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And so, for the last 10 years, my wife and I would travel to Scottsdale with our daughter all different times of the year. And we just love it there. It's kind of like our vibe. We just feel like we fit in there. And so when my wife had her injury, my perspective shifted in a massive way, like a really fast perspective shift. And I just really started exploring how can I get us to where we want to be if Sam comes out of this, her injury. And so I just kind of started putting a plan together. And then once we knew that Sam was going to be able to, kind of continue to get better, I just said, hey, let's figure out how to make this happen. And so it's been about a 3-year project, I would say, just because of the things you have to do logistically. And so now Sam and my daughter and our 4 dogs have been permanently waited there. And so now I'm just the final steps of the move.
Okay, perfect. Now I've been following along a little bit so I know more about what happened with your wife, but for a lot of people listening, I'm sure you're new to them. They don't know the situation. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about what happened?
Yeah, no, not at all. I love sharing Samantha's journey and then our family's journey that is tied to that. So my wife's name's Samantha, and April 16th of 2022, her and I were out on just a normal, amazing date night downtown Denver with 2 other couples that were our good friends. And Sam said that she needed to use the restroom. So she got up and went to the restroom. And about 7-8 minutes later, I was just kind of uneasy, like, just like, where's Sam? I wanted to check on her. And so I sent her a text and didn't respond. So I went back, I knocked on the door of the restroom. No one came out. So I opened the door and she was holding onto a stall, the corner of a stall, and like wavering, and she had thrown up. And so I said, hey, Sam, like, are you okay? And she looked at me and she said, who are you? And I just was like, I left the bathroom right away and I grabbed my friend Brad's keys to his Toyota Highlander and I got her in the car. I called the hospital that I was going to take her to. I knew a doctor at the time, so I asked to speak to him, and then I got him on his cell, and so he directed me to where to go and who to talk to. And so we got there in about 12 minutes. They got her into emergency room, and within 45 minutes, she was life flighted to St. Anthony Central, which is one of the premier neurological hospitals in Colorado. And within 15 more minutes, she was having emergency brain surgery for a ruptured brain aneurysm. So,
Wow.
life changed, snap of fingers. And so
Right.
that's the real short version of it.
So I'm sure that's part of the trauma that is mentioned. And at the same time that happened, you were also running a very big business. Is that right? This happened in the time that you were an entrepreneur?
That's right. Yeah. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I started a garage door company in Denver in 2005, and it grew to be the most popular, highest rated garage door company in Colorado. I would say we were a small, big business. I never had a ton of people, but we were definitely a mighty mouse type of business. And yeah, we were just cruising along and scaling. And so we were at a place kind of like, hey, let's continue to grow this, create sustainability, kind of like thinking about the next steps of how to remove me from the business. That's kind of where we were at that point.
I'm sorry, my voice is a little scratchy.
No, you're okay.
Yeah. So entrepreneurship, but like life things happen, right? So what were some of the biggest things that you learned in that time about handling personal life and entrepreneur life?
Well, I think everybody has certain superpowers built within ourselves, and life brings them out of us. We don't know when or where, but ever since I was young, probably like 11 to 13, I didn't recognize this until later in life that this was a strength of mine. But whenever there was a problem or a challenge, I would love to think of a solution. And so, with Sam's injury, it was no different than 19 years of entrepreneurship. Being an entrepreneur is problems, solutions, and creating an action plan and tools and people and processes and systems to get from the challenge to the solution. And so, the doctors, when I got Sam to the hospital, were like, "Hey, how long did it take for 911 to respond?" And I said, "I didn't even call 911. I'm more of a, here's a problem. How fast can I find a solution?" And so that's the way my brain worked. And so, when Sam went into the hospital, that perspective, like I mentioned, it just was like, okay, what do I want to do? It just compounded life into a smaller package. Like, we wanted to do these things that were later in life, but how can we do them sooner?
Mm-hmm.
And then the question was, if Sam comes out of this, it changed.
Yeah. I'm so glad she did. And David joins us today and he says, wow, there's no way to prepare for such a moment.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, David. I will say, when we encounter a trauma or a challenge, we have been preparing. Now, you don't know what that moment's going to be, but life it's doing its work on us every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And a lot of it is like how we're going to face it, right? Are we going to be victims, or are we going to turn around and be resilient through that and make something of it? So I like to hear more about how you did that, and then what kind of led to the suicide attempt, if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Um, so what I'll say is, I think resilience is one of the greatest things that we can create. I mean, not everybody, I don't think anyone's born resilient. I think you become resilient after trials, challenges, and then you're like, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to try again. I'm going to create this. That's resilience. And so, I think everybody has resilience in them, and sometimes people just stop short of wanting to continue. And so that's kind of transitions into the suicide attempt. That's like a long drawn out process of like what came to that. But my wife and I, so being an entrepreneur it's challenging for everybody involved. So when I started the business, I was single. I didn't have any responsibilities. I didn't own a home. I didn't own a car. So it was just kind of like I was free. And so when you evolve into, having a relationship and being married and then having a child, and there's a lot of pressures that we put on ourselves as entrepreneurs and just as human beings in general. I call them blind expectations, because we assume what our partner or our relationship person is thinking we should do, or they have an expectation, and we've never even talked to them about it. Like, we're creating an expectation for them that we don't even know exists. And so I think we're all guilty of that. And so what happened with me was the expectation that I put in place for Sam, for me, was so crazy that I started to really become obsessed with my business. And how could I create this massive success? How can I become financially wealthy, and these things? And I kind of lost track of like my family, like my wife and my daughter. And I just continued to work harder and become, more successful financially, and then successful in the vision of like what society kind of lays out for us. And so when I was doing that, I wasn't aware of losing my wife, so to speak. I wasn't even paying attention to that, because I thought what I was supposed to be doing was creating a more significant lifestyle, better lifestyle. And so what eventually happened was in 2015, I found out that Sam had stepped out of our marriage I found text messages, and it wasn't like I was looking. I mean, we've been together for a long time at that point. So I just asked, like, what's going on? And I couldn't even be mad. Like, I mean, I was disappointed, but I was like, man, like, I actually really reflected on what part did I have of this situation. And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people are like, I'm like all of these emotions, and they just let their emotions go. And, I was upset and I was disappointed, but I also found like, man, I've been really obsessed with this company. Like, what for? I didn't really even have like a vision. I didn't have a goal. I was just working hard to continue to grow. And so Sam was like, hey, let's take a step back and like, let's talk about what we need you to do around here, be more in the moment with us, be more present. And so that's when I hired a business coach and completely changed the dynamic of our business. I really focused on making some positive personal development changes within myself. And then I thought everything was really going really well. And then about 2 years later, I found similar messages and kind of like the same type of thing was going on again. And then I was angry. And then we had a different conversation. Ultimately, I knew that my wife and I love one another. There's just challenges happening. And I was like, you know what, let's try to figure this out. So again, work through those challenges again. And then in 2020, a lot was happening in the world. So a lot of pressures. My wife had lost her job. My company was actually growing because we had an exemption we were a necessary business. And so we were working more. My wife was at home. And so she stepped out of our marriage again. And at that point, it became really hard. Like, I was just really hurt. And at that point, I was just like, you know what, I'm kind of done. And because along the way, I'm continuing to like put in time for personal development and create a better version of myself. And so I was just like, I can't do anything right for this person for them to not do this. And so eventually I just, I had a plan. I put a lot of things in place. And I went through my attempt. And when I got home, a big part of that, like my daughter, Jaden, she literally saved my life. And that story's in the book, and it's a long drawn out story, but I'll just say that, for someone who's not a big religious person, like divine intervention played a huge part in like why I'm still here today. And it was all because of my daughter. So, which was amazing. And so what happened was when I got home, I sought out help. I got a hold of my therapist, who's known me for 19 years. And then I went through an ideation clinic, and I started reflecting on like, why was my wife doing these things? And then it really clicked really fast once I had tools accessible to me that Sam is a human being, and Sam's insecurities are what drove her to do what she did. And nothing I do is going to make somebody not do what they're going to do. And so a lot of people forget that we're just separate people. And, and then I started asking Samantha, like, what are you going through? What are the challenges? I don't think I ever did that, like my whole life. I was very self-absorbed. I didn't think I was, because I've always been a really good dude, a nice guy. I help people. But honestly, like when I started going through that process, I was like, man, like, I don't know. I never knew some of the challenges that Sam was going through, just because I was never an open book husband with her. Like, she could come to me and we could communicate, and, who knows what hindsight would have happened, but those were the things that led up to that. There's a lot of like micro stories in there between that. Like, that was the most significant thing, was once I decided on the attempt, it all came down to, I wanted to remove myself from the equation so Sam and Jaden could live their best lives, like what I thought would allow them to live their best lives. And then once I came through my therapy, I'm a part of that. I'm a part of the best life. And then I also,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so I had a significant mindset shift. And then also a lot of things started to align, like what I wanted to do with my life. I almost instantly knew that I didn't want to continue doing what I'd been doing, And I knew that I wanted to start pursuing this thing, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, so that led you to a pivot in your after your recovery and stuff, you made a significant pivot with your business. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you transitioned? Because that is a big swing going from a garage door company to what you're doing now, and then tell us a little bit more about what you do offer now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anyone who knows me and has known me for a long time knows that, if I have an idea and it's like important to me, it doesn't take long for me to put it into action. And so sometimes that's really good. I think a lot of creative entrepreneurs are like that. So when I recognized that I didn't want to be a part of my company in the garage door industry, and I wanted to pursue consciousness and learn how to provide tools to others and serve others and be inspired by others, and really focus on consciousness is kind of like what I'll kind of get to here in a minute. But it didn't take long. In the time from my attempt to the time of Sam's injury was about 7 months. And so something that really hit me really hard was in a matter of 7 months, our adopted daughter that was 9 could have lost both of her parents. And so that was a massive, like that was huge for us, like a huge for me, like that would have been starting to look at it from me looking at it was like, man, like that would be terrible. And so, and then I realized like, I want to be part of all of the life that I can be. And so, I started reaching out to people and just saying, hey, like, how should I prep my business to exit? I hired a bookkeeping company that came in and like reconfigured our books, how they were designed, making them pretty. I mean, they're just very legitimate books. Everything was how it needed to be. Every dollar was accounted for. The company was very reputable. And I knew that when somebody was interested in purchasing my company, I could just turn it over to them and then it would be a very smooth process. It was an investment, but it was a great investment for our business to move in that position. And then really started focusing on low-hanging fruit within the business. Where can the business save money because then you're making money? And then learning about EBITDA and how to get this business to be worth as much as possible, as fast as possible, because I knew that I couldn't start my new life until I exited that whole life. And so
Right.
that was really challenging too, because my team had no idea. And that was really hard for me too, because I do like to share and I like to make sure everybody else feels comfortable. But I had been through a micro version of this in like 2015 and I shared, and it really was negatively impactful on my business to where this time around, the company that I was exiting to, I knew was going to be an improvement to my employees on every level. So I didn't feel bad for keeping anything from them, so to speak, because everything that we were doing and I was doing was going to create a better opportunity for them also. And so when I started the process of the exit, I really dove into my book, just because I wanted to be able to be done and then kind of move forward. I didn't want to have like a stop and then a restart. So, I mean, I kind of started the new life and education, which I'd been doing for a little while before. Once I made the decision that I was going to exit, I started investing in personal development, coaching, executive coaching, traveling the country and going to different seminars from some of the leaders in the social environment, not necessarily to learn, which you always get educated, but to kind of see what's missing also. And that led me to, by the time I was exited in January of this year, I had a clear vision of where I wanted to be in the social world of a thought leader, so to speak. And so that's kind of where I have devoted most of my time, is like, how can I help people find who they really are, like who their true identity is from within themselves. And then once you start honoring who that person is, everything in your life just really comes together. It's a pretty special transformation. Now that I've actually coached it and seen it too, it's a really cool thing. So, I mean, that's kind of what I've transitioned to is, writing, but also I write online coaching programs, and then I do individual coaching for people and businesses. I do consulting for businesses to help them scale to eventually sell. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, okay. So one of the things that you're coaching for is the experience that you went through. Like I think a lot of entrepreneurs go through that. They strive and strive and strive. They grow this business and they scale. And then they're like, okay, I did that. And now I'm ready to be done with that. So that's something that you do help other entrepreneurs with is how to get, okay, congratulations, you made it. Now what's next?
Yeah, totally. And I would say I'm in that space. I'm really good as like the first and second tier of that, just because most of the businesses are small businesses, like mom and dad or family, and probably great revenue, but don't fully understand the impact of their financials. And they're probably not keeping track of like KPIs and monitoring their systems or like a CSRs and CMR, like all of the things that manage and process. And so, I've only had a couple because I'm pretty new at this, but I've had a couple clients, small businesses that were going through this right now because they ultimately have seen the impact of exiting a company allows you to go do something else. And a lot of
Mhm.
times as an entrepreneur, you can get stuck or feel stuck because you've done this one thing forever, but then you just don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important place to be because there's so many businesses out there right now where they just have no idea how to get in touch with, private equity or companies that might be interested in them. And so it's good just to know. And then some people are afraid to ask for help. And I used to be one of those people too.
Yeah, I can definitely see where someone who has scaled a large business then doesn't want to have to turn around and say, "Hey, I need some help getting out of this." Do you think that there's ever a moment where that feels like a step down or a failure instead of excitement about going into a new journey or doing something new?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from my experience. People ask if I have any regrets for selling my company or, things that I miss. Yeah, I miss the revenue. I miss the income. So I think that that's something that will probably always be a question. And then also the value of our business being so meaningful to us. And so what I mean by that is like, I went into selling my business pretty realistic. Like knowing that the value of my business was worth as much as somebody else was willing to pay, instead of me saying, well, this is how much my business is worth, you're going to pay that, because that's just not how the world works. Where a lot of companies, they feel like their company is worth generally significantly more than it really is worth. And so, I don't miss anything about the industry. Um, but there are things that I'm excited about, building this new business, to get back to certain milestones that I accomplished similar in that industry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure the perspective that you had with that business is just gonna drive things at an exponential level with your new venture. So, David in the comment, he said, "Pivot responsibly, great perspective and action." I think that that's a great comment. We did have one comment that came in on the event announcement that I would really like to get to. Um, Samhita, or I'm not quite sure, I'm probably butchering her name, but she says the idea of transforming trauma into empowerment is compelling and essential in today's entrepreneurial landscape. I believe discussions around mental health and resilience are critical, especially in high pressure environments. It would be enlightening to explore how organizations can support their team in these areas. Any insights on that?
Oh, so many. I think one of the early words was, could you reread the first? I think it's within the first sentence because we'll word.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I kind of sped through that. The idea of transforming trauma into empowerment is compelling and essential in today's entrepreneurial
Yeah.
landscape.
So I missed empowerment. I just want to make sure I knew what word was said there. So yeah. So I mean, the insights that I have of seeing how leadership coaching, executive coaching, team building, um, depending on the size of the company, but I think this could work for any size company that's more than 3 people. So if you have a very small business and there's 3 of you, um, some sort of a coach, individual coaching and team coaching is significant. So I never in 19 years invested in a coach for my employees. I only invested in coaching for me because I thought if I can learn, I can teach. Well, the challenge with that is I could learn, but I'm already managing my people and there's already some challenges there. So then when I try to teach them other ways, there's pushback. But if you have a coach that's a third party and their objective is to help that individual be successful, they're going to be more willing to be successful. And so,
Yeah.
within businesses, this is something that I will do. I don't do this right now, but I have coaches that coach me on this. Is for executive coaching and business coaching, generally what we'll do is go into, the C-suite team, work with them, and then they're going to say, hey, these are my top performers. And then you go down and you start having coaching conversations with them and say, hey, are these things that you can delegate and teach? If not, there's going to be some things, but then even going down to your producers, right? So the people who produce revenue, generally your C-suite's not producing revenue. They're managing and they're growing ideas, they're whiteboarding, and they're in control processes and procedures. But to your producers need coaching too. And maybe more importantly than the higher level people. And I say that because they need to be inspired, and they also need people to show they can inspire others. And so if you can get I'm trying to figure out a better way to say this, but to get your base layer team, your producers, to buy in and really understand that your company is trying to invest in them. And that's the company that bought me. The reason I sold to them, because I had multiple companies that I could have sold to. The reason I sold to this one company was because of the investment they would make into my people. Because I saw they flew me to their organization. They showed me the investment they make into their entry level positions. And they do that because then that creates loyalty from the ground up. And so I may have over explained that, but the insight I have is I think on any organization should really look at hiring a coach, finding out what type of coaching system aligns the best with what you're trying to accomplish, and then having clear expectations on when you communicate, whoever's in charge of hiring the coach, or if it's a team, making sure the coaching platform, because for businesses, sometimes you might need a coaching organization, which those exist. You may need a team to come in and say, hey, we're going to coach your company. And then that's a whole different process, but you have to vet them. You have to make sure your company aligns with how they work, so that when they start to coach, you're getting the best out of your ROI with your investment with that company. But I would just say coaching is significant.
Yeah. I think that's some really great insight. My husband and I had a business before starting BoomTag, and he is my partner now in the business as well. Sometimes, though, I feel like a little bit of a solopreneur because he works a full-time job, and that was the same in both instances. So the first company, I didn't have a business coach at all. And then I went to talking about like personal development and that kind of thing. I went to a leadership summit, and they were just talking about how important it is to get like really good leadership in front of you and connect with people who just have that leadership authority and can help you through some things. And I didn't really realize how important that was until I went to that leadership summit. That was the biggest thing I came out of that summit with. So when I started the new business, I actually started it in conjunction with a business coach, and have kept a business coach on board since. And I think especially for solopreneurs, having someone to bounce things off of and things like that. And they can't always invest in like the super expensive business coaching, right? Because there's programs out there you can spend as much money as you want on a business coach. But I've at least invested in like a group coaching. So you have some resources, some people that you can bounce ideas off of and that kind of thing. And then I found it super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think it may be, so when it comes to like a small business and needing coaching to grow a company, to a solopreneur who sometimes solopreneurs don't like to hear this expression, but it is true. A solopreneur created a job for themselves. It's self-employment. And so you really have to understand, like, do I want this to scale? Do I want it to be a business? Do I want to create sustainability? And so when you're a solopreneur, which I was for a long time, and then going to a partner, not in the sense of like a partnership within business, but just having a partner, just having one more person in the business, that might be even a more pivotal place to have a coach, because they're a mediator also. And so sometimes when you have one other person in an organization, there's just nobody there to like create space, boundaries, bounce ideas off. You really do need a triangle. You need something that's you need a tripod. You need a third person. And the same thing if you're a solopreneur. When there's two people, especially a marriage is involved. So I coach on that too, because I grew up in a family business. And so I have a unique perspective on that as well. And so I would love to chat with anyone, Kendra, we can talk sometime, but there's always insights and ways to, just learn what might work best for you and your partner, who is your actual life partner. And so I would just say coaching can be really important when you are in a business with your spouse.
Yeah, it's definitely a different dynamic and adds different layers to the marriage that didn't start the marriage with. So it can be
Totally.
a little bit complex for sure. I'm glad that you offer some support for families in that situation.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit more about the things that you're doing now. So you use this hashtag in almost every post I see of yours online. So I'm sure you know what I'm going to say. Let's talk about kindness matters.
Yeah. So if I would have known what, hashtags were, or if they would have existed, when I was like 9, I probably would have started using them then, because I do think that I've always believed that kindness matters. I feel like I was one of those kids who just wanted to be nice to everybody, wanted to be friends with everybody. And I always just felt like when you are nice to somebody, even people that you don't want to be, which those are probably generally the people that need it the most. I always was really aware and had an intuition of like seeing the impact of that. And sometimes you wouldn't see that impact right away. But so the hashtag kindness matters, or just kindness matters, it is actually a movement. I did not start it, but I did become a pretty sizable advocate, on social medias, as sizable as I am as a small influencer, on Facebook and Instagram. I'm very small on YouTube right now, and then on TikTok. Our TikTok community is huge with the hashtag kindness matters movement. I'm in Houston, Texas at another creator's space right now. One of my best friends already. We've known each other for 7 months, and she is a huge advocate for kindness matters. And what we do is we just try to hashtag that as much as we remember to, for sure. And then talk about it. There are a lot of things that are free in this world, and your mindset and kindness it doesn't cost anything to be kind. We're such a society of like quick, subconscious, irrational thinking that we're just negative all the time. It's just how we are. Like Americans, like we're so busy. Life is stressful. It is, and I get it. Driving all the time, and I haven't always been like the kindest person, I haven't always been like, preaching kindness and being kind, just because, my perspective and my life has changed. Right. And so this place in my life, I recognize where I believe people need kindness even more, especially on TikTok, which is crazy. There's so much negativity on TikTok, but there's way more kindness. And so it's a platform that I didn't even know it really existed until January, and I had a coach recommend that I get on there. But I quickly created a community, and then I was welcomed into a larger community, and then I started just being kind. And then I was dubbed by, one of my friends, Giggle Gals is her name, and her name's Ashley, and she dubbed me King of Kindness. And then I and my name on TikTok is just Trapper Searles. Everyone has like a name, but I'm just me. And so, yeah, kindness matters is one of those things where like it can change someone's life. I mean, it really can. And it can change, that can just change a moment in time. But the moment in time, it's part of the life. And so I recognize it every day. Like I love seeing kindness. I mean, like sometimes like I'm really weird, like I'll be like, I was at the Social Security office here in Houston, Texas this morning, and I'm in line with like 80 other strangers waiting to get in. And I noticed this woman in front of me, she's in her probably like her 60s, and she had a fresh manicure. And I get my nails done, I love manicures, pedicures. And I was like, hey, I really like your nails. And she turned around and she kind of gave me a weird look. And then I showed her my nails, like, yeah, I'm a nails person too. And she was like, thank you so much. And she was like the sweetest lady. But she didn't, you could tell there was impact there. I don't know if that makes sense, but when you're kind to somebody, it's just first of all, it feels really good. So it's selfish. But even if somebody doesn't seem like they receive it, which is more often than not, you try to be kind to somebody and they might be rude to you, or they might have an attitude, or they might be negative. That moment may have caused impact that you'll never see. That moment where you could have been a certain way could be impactful to them in 6 months. And they may have somebody say something similar to what you said. And later in life, they recognize like, oh man, like I wish I would have been that way. And so, but if people don't go out of their way to be kind, kindness will go away. And we definitely don't need that.
And I think you said Americans are so busy and stuff, we tend to be negative, but especially online. I think there's something about commenting online that gives people this entitlement and like they treat people like they're better than someone else. So I think that in your comments and everything online, just like keeping that in mind, that maybe someone just needs to hear something kind that day. Maybe you don't agree with what they're putting online, but I don't think there's any reason to beat people down, and it happens a lot. So I love that. And Meryl says, Trapper Searles, kudos, Trapper Searles, on being a huge advocate for kindness. So you do things a little bit different on TikTok and on Instagram. Like we're live right now, but you go live all the time. And I'd like to just talk a little bit about that and how you built community through going live. Like I've hopped on when you've gone live before where there's like no agenda. It's not structured like we are today. Looks like I lost my, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I still have you cut out there just for a moment.
Okay, great. So I'm sorry about that. I was saying sometimes you're just working on your computer, you're talking to the commenters as they come in. It's nothing structured. Sometimes you work out and you're live, and it's just like a different way of thinking, but I think it's a different way to grow influence. And so if you would talk a little bit about that and talk about the community that you've been building and the TikTok kind of community that you've been hanging out with and that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. So, anyone who's known me for a little bit of time, I'm a unique person and I don't mind doing things, out there and in front of people and trying new things. It's exciting to me. I get nervous too, but with social media, there really is this lack of judgment just because you can turn the screen off, So I kind of look at it like I might as well try it out here. So, because the people that do know me are like, Trap's just doing something silly again. No big deal. There's the people that don't know me that are like, most of the time, they're like, oh, hey, this is unusual. We're going to keep watching or whatever. And so, I've been doing lives on Facebook for a long time, but not very sure, no agenda. Just hanging out or working out. I work out a lot, and nutrition's been important to me. And Instagram's a little bit more unique, but I started going on there more, trying to understand it. Like I said, beginning of the year, I was really prompted to hop on TikTok, and I was just like, oh, another social media. I'm 42 years old, so I'm like, this is for kids and whatnot. And I was just really blown away with how socially active TikTok is. It is insane. I mean, there are millions of people on TikTok all day. And it is pretty special, especially when you start building out your communities. And so I created an intentional room. So when I go live with intention, because I go live to just be me, and then I go live with intention. So when we're going live with intention, the space is to create a safe space for vulnerability, tools and resources and support. And so, people will generally come into that space when they need help or they just need somebody to be there. Or we've supported people through so much on TikTok. I mean, through suicide ideation, through divorce, we've had a couple of women that lost their husbands within like the last day or two. They come on and they come into this space because they just know they're going to be surrounded by love, kindness, support, and they come in there and they can just cry. I mean, I've had people come in and share a space with me and they just cry, and I'll cry with them. We have several people in the boxes, so to speak, just like this, but you can have up to like 16 of them. And the support is really cool. And then the community really started to grow. I've been on TikTok for like 6 months now, and I'm not trying to grow super fast like some of the rooms, but I have about 3,400 followers and really intentional followers. So, when I post stuff, I don't get a ton of hits. I don't go viral, but the people that are constantly following, the consistent ones, which does grow just slower, those are part of our little community. And so just here in Texas, we had 10 of us come from all, from Maine, Iowa, West Coast, me from Denver, and like we met in real life, which is super cool. And I've met my friend one more time in Austin a few weeks ago. And it's really crazy too. One thing that's really special about like these online communities is when you become vulnerable, because you have to be vulnerable to go into these communities and let your guard down. And then what happens is you really meet people that you align with. Because when you just keep it limited to this circle that's around you and like your pool, well, you're really only going to catch certain fish, right? But when you open this up to a worldwide connection, I mean, I've made friends, not just in our country, but I have a friend, Candyman. I almost talk to him almost every single day. And he's like the nicest dude. And he's Candyman in Pakistan. Like, and he's store, and he's like 23 years old. And he's like the greatest energy. Like he just is always positive. And it's a pretty special place. I could go on and on about how TikTok and the community on TikTok is so special. But it really is. I encourage anybody that has a thought about TikTok and like a certain feeling about it, go on and check it out. You're going to see a lot of stuff you don't want to see. But like any algorithm, whether it's on Facebook or IG, it's going to start creating content that you want to see and people that you want to see. And it can be related to whatever you want. And then you can create that content that you want to put out there too. And so that's what I do. I put content out from working out to my food to shenanigans. So like my content is very organic. My space that is timed and scheduled is very intentional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you're getting together with people that you have met online. So like LinkedIn is definitely more my jam, but I have tried TikTok and been putting some things out there and stuff. I think that I've heard some people on LinkedIn talk about doing little get-togethers in person, networking, which I think is great. I would like to definitely try meeting some of my LinkedIn connections in person at some point. It's hard because of where I'm located. I'm not really by a big city, but at some point, maybe that can be a thing. Maybe I'll get to travel more with the show or something like that. So that could be a future thing, but I love the idea for sure. And we're getting a lot of really great.
Yeah, sorry, Kendra. I was just going to say, I would encourage you to, yeah, even on the LinkedIn. I went to one of my most impactful summits from an invite on LinkedIn, and I'm not on there a ton, but I do. Excuse me, a little bit, but yeah, I encourage you to, if someone's not putting it together, then maybe you can.
Hey, that's an idea for sure. Yeah, I've heard a few people like in Toronto and stuff like doing things like that. Maybe I could get something together in Denver, which is a little bit closest big city to where I'm located. But great idea. And there's just a lot of really great comments coming in. I don't have time to put them all on the screen, but Stanley says, great topic, Kendra and Trapper Searles. Positivity and kindness do matter, and that is for sure. I would love to just give people an opportunity to know more about how to follow you online. And if you would tell people how to find your book and when that's coming out, give the details to us there, please.
Totally. So the easiest way to find me is I have a unique name, Trapper Searles. I don't think if you Google it, I don't think you find any others. If you do, just look for the best looking one, that's covered in tattoos. That's me. All kidding aside, you can Google Trapper Searles. My website is trappersearles.com. My name is all my socials. So IG, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Merrill asked on TikTok. So my TikTok is Trapper Searles. It's because I'm trying to create a brand. I mean, it's just trying to keep it clean, unique, but just the name's unique in a sense. So, you might be able to search like the perspective expert. That's kind of like part of the business that's happening. As far as the book goes, it's set to publish the last week of this month. So we're in the very final stages, which is super cool. Just picked out the cover. I shared that with you, I believe. And that took, like half of the time it took to write the book. Very stressful.
It's a very cool cover, though, I will say, from a designer's perspective. I love everything about it. So
thank you. And so Amazon, it'll be on Amazon. And, I wish I had the date. I don't, but it'll be later this month, end of this month. Amazon, it'll be on Kindle, hardback, paperback, and then within 6 weeks, it's going to be an audiobook. I'm narrating the audiobook.
okay, very cool.
Community, I had about 800 people do a poll, and they said, do the audio yourself. So they must like listening to me read, which is cool and exciting. And it's good reps for me to learn to speak better, more efficiently, I suppose. So yeah, so the socials is just me, Trapper Searles, on all of them. I'd love to just kind of continue to build an amazing community. And then with the book, it is it's a tool also in between each chapter. I think this is really special about the book. I've never read a book like this, and maybe one does exist, so I don't want to say that I created this, but in between each chapter is a perspective note, which is cool. It's kind of like a little chapter about the chapter, so to speak. So there are like tools within the book. And then the other thing too is within the book, at the back of the book, QR codes are huge nowadays. So there's gonna be a QR code, scan that'll take you to a coaching program or to the website. Super exciting stuff. So I'm excited for you to read the book.
Yeah, that is very cool. I am not much of a reader, so if I do, I'll be listening to the audiobook for sure. Do you have any kind of book tour in mind, or is that in the works, doing something like that?
Yeah, so that's in the works. And MEK, who's upstairs in her office working, is you kind of my PR person without being my PR person. She's just very logistically correct with her thinking, where I'm more of out on a whim. And so there's going to be a podcast tour for sure. And then there's going to be a lot of TikTok stuff, just because, I'm parts of larger communities on TikTok. And so I'm going to be going live with a lot of big hosts, which is super cool. Again, at the end of the month, the book will be released at the end of the month. And yeah, so podcasts. I'm trying to get on as many podcasts as possible. I hope I am impactful and create value. But it's also good catching up with you too, which has been really special.
Yeah. So you had just put out a post that says, hey, I got a book launch coming up. I need some podcasts to go on. If anyone of my connections knows of a podcast. And I'm like, well, hey, I haven't talked to you in a long time, but I'm starting a podcast. So today was just a great opportunity to dive into that, talk about the upcoming book, and kind of get to catch up live. And people got a lot of value from it. I can tell just by the comments coming in. Christy says this was an excellent show. So thank you so much for taking your time to be with us today. And I'm just going to wrap things up here. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm at Boomtag Media at Instagram and TikTok as well. Thank you. That's it for this week's Business Boom podcast. You've got the spark. Now go light up your business with what you have learned. If you like what you heard today, hit that subscribe button, drop us a review, or tell a fellow entrepreneur about the show. Keep pushing, keep growing, and catch us next week for more booming business strategies.